I want to thank you for doing something and looking at this from a perspective that is thoughtful, that is embracing, and that recognizes the largeness of this issue. Might I just recount for my colleagues that this is a bipartisan bill. Many people have come to the floor of the House or on the Judiciary Committee. Some are on science, some are on energy and commerce, but all of them have faced what I faced, Chairman Conyers, being stopped in the airport by airport workers, individuals who are hourly wages, and they simply saying, we can't take it anymore. As I got on the plane, their last word was, can you do something about the gasoline prices? As we enter into the summer, we are being told that it's going to get worse, higher and higher and higher. The distinguished speaker said, the gentlelady from Texas, I represent what is known as the energy capital of the world. And what I would encourage the particular companies that I have the privilege of representing, and I have, in essence, probably voted differently from many in this House in supporting the Energy Policy Act and a number of initiatives that were supposed to help us diversify or help enhance the capacity of our particular companies. They were supposed to help build refinery capacity, which I will tell you is an issue. It was supposed to applaud offshore development in certain areas if it was environmentally safe. We've tried to do everything in order to ensure that we have a strong industry, but that we provide for those who are in need. This legislation that simply gives the Attorney General the authority to find out about an organization, many of us have friends that happen to be from these particular nations. We are supportive of the engagement of these particular nations in the Mideast. We work with them. We've traveled there. We encourage engagement on the State Department level. We want to be friends. But there has to be a question of whether or not OPEC provides itself insulated by antitrust and against antitrust violations such that they can gouge or raise prices without any recrimination. This is a full legislative initiative that gives the Attorney General of the United States the ability to review whether or not this entity violates the antitrust laws. You must understand that when the oil comes to the United States, even though we may be operators in those foreign countries, some of the name companies that you know, some of the ones that you pull up to the station, the OPEC sets the prices. And therefore, they look at the marketplace to determine how much money they can get out of a suffering nation or suffering world. Mr. Conyers, as you well know, one of our trade deficit partners, China, is consuming more oil than one might imagine. That bumps the price up. And who is the victim? The hardworking citizens in this country, whether they live in Houston, Detroit, or New York, or whether they're simply trying to get little ones to soccer teams, to after-school programs, or to their religious institution. Nobody can get anywhere because of the prices. So I simply, as I draw to a close, want to be able to cite from the report language of this bill. With control of 40% of the world's petroleum, OPEC has substantial influences over the price of oil. OPEC member nations have extensive oil reserves and therefore can readily increase supply and lower prices. I think that's simple enough to understand. They can increase supply, they can lower prices, but they're not doing it. And so I would ask my colleagues from all parts of the country to be sympathetic to vacationers, people trying to get to hospitals, mothers and fathers taking children to various places, elderly trying to get to the places of worship where they go. Just the sheer operation of America is dependent on what we do here today. I can't go home, and I imagine none of you can, without saying we try to do something. I close simply by an oral letter to my constituents. You might think you can ride this out. Those of you who are the named and successful operators of our energy industry in the United States, we encourage you. You are American. You have jobs. You are the engine of the economy. We're not your enemy. We are your supporters. But we have to work for the consumers. Come out in the open. Encourage a round table of discussion. Let the CEOs of the major companies sit in a roundtable discussion and discuss with the American people why we have this increasing and burdensome cost of gasoline. Look closely at the legislation that is before us and recognize that it is a valuable piece of legislation that gives authority just for the thoughtful review of how we can do better. I ask my colleagues to support this particular legislation that in fact H.R. 2264, that in fact is an answer to this constant question, what are we going to do about gasoline prices? As members of the United States Congress, it is imperative that we act. We have to do more. This is a thoughtful piece of legislation that frames the question whether or not a sovereign nation is protected against antitrust violations that impact negatively on the consumer in the United States of America. We have to do this, and we have to do more. I thank the gentleman from Detroit for Michigan, the distinguished chairman of the Judiciary Committee, for yielding to this grounded representative of the energy industry in Houston, Texas, who wants to work collectively to get something done for the people of the United States. I yield back.